My name is Miriam Block. I am the director here at the Heritage Winooski Mill Museum. So welcome to the museum if you haven't been here. We're in the Champlain Mill, which is a historic mill building built in 1912. The mission of the museum is to weave our industrial heritage, our industrial and cultural heritage with what matters to our community today. So this project seemed like a really amazing fit for us. Eric Adonis, who's here in the back, was working with me on another project, and she mentioned Welcome Blanket to me, and I thought this is an amazing project that we really should look into and see if we can do. Because years ago, the mill in World War I, World War II, they produced blankets, military blankets for the military, woolen blankets. And a lot of the people that worked in the mill were immigrants. They came to this community looking for an opportunity for work. They came from Canada and from Europe and the Middle East. And so this community has been, for many years over time, a place where people from other countries have come looking for a new opportunity and a new life. And so we want to think about the past, but we want to see how we can share that past with people who are here in the community today, who are new, who don't know anything about that past. They don't know necessarily even what this building was for. So this seemed like a really nice opportunity to bridge people who've been here for a while and people who are brand new, and do that through a textile project to share that information. So I reached out to Jayna Zweiman to see if that was a project that we could be participants in. She will explain more about the project, and so I won't give any of that away. But I'm really excited to have her here. Jayna lives in California, and we were able to get a grant from Vermont Humanities, and we have a representative from Vermont Humanities today, Chelsea in the back, to get Jayna to come here to speak with us and to see the work that our community has done. The first part of the project is to invite people in the community to make blankets, to then these blankets get gifted to new Americans. And we say they're a gift because it's like, you can think of it like when you have a new neighbor and you want to bring them a casserole or a pie, right? It's a gift that you're giving them to show them like we're welcoming you to our community. So that's really what this project is about. So when I decided, okay, I want to do this project, I need a partner I need a bunch of partners to collaborate with. First off, I wanted to find someone who would distribute the blankets, we'll talk about it in a second. But the other thing is I needed to get this message out to the community for the makers. So how many of you in the audience actually made a blanket?
Thank you.
Yay! We also had to reach the makers, and what better place to reach the makers than the yarn and quilt shops in our community, right? So we had community partners that were so nice about sharing postcards to get the word out about this project, offer discounts to people who are purchasing materials for the project, and some of them even offered to be a hub for collecting blankets when the museum wasn't open, and that's easier for some people to go to a location they're more familiar with, like the yarn shop. So that was another really great thing, and we have one of our community partners here from Must Love Yarn. So this has really been a community effort. And so yes, so going back to our collaborator is AALV, Association of Africans Living in Vermont. They are located in Burlington, and we have representative from there today who Irene Carabo Webster, who's sitting right there, who I've invited to just talk with you briefly about what they do, because I've had so many people ask me, what does AALV do? And I thought, what better than to have someone from AALV share that with you, and the projects we've done with them. So just one last thing, we just wanted to thank, I thanked Vermont Humanities Council for getting Jayna here. We have beautiful macarons that you're all welcome to eat, and that's courtesy of Physicians Computer Company. They're great people in this building who support all the work that we do here at the museum. And that's about it for now. So I'm going to have Carabo come up and talk to you, and then we'll have Jayna chat. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Hello. How are you all doing? Good. I just was enjoying listening to Miriam because she's talking about immigrants. I am an immigrant myself. I'm from Kenya and I've lived here for about 15 years and I love it. Actually, when I arrived here, I wanted to turn around and leave because it was it was right in the winter. February was so cold. I wore everything I had in my suitcase, and I still wasn't warm enough. Anyway, I'm still here, so that's it's historical now. You can hide that story somewhere. I love that. We are still talking about immigrants. So I work with the Association of Africans that live in Vermont, and it's a community-based place where we help situate new Americans that have come here as refugees or asylum seekers, and they come to our office for various services. And our job is to just help them get situated, get your house, know where to get the ESD office, where they are, with the bus stop, how to get to your doctor, etc. And so our office is also a place where we help other service providers be able to communicate with the new Americans, because mostly you will find that they come from places where they don't speak English. It's not their first language. Because these are our clientele, are people who are coming from war zones, they have problems with mental issues, and so we also help them get situated with clinicians at UVM and for therapy, deeper therapy. And I run a program that is it's a group of women that come for empowerment, and we get to do a lot of fun stuff. So when Miriam reached out to me, it was a perfect fit because we get to do a bunch of stuff, from yoga to, this was a first for them. Knitting, including for me. My mom had tried to teach me when I was younger. She's really, really good at it. She's a seamstress. I just got as far as the buttonhole and hemming, but I wasn't as good as she was. And anyway, when she introduced it, I tried to remember from my memory how I used to crochet, and I found that I had forgotten quite a bit. But it was fun, because we were making a blanket, and the concept was to make little pieces and then eventually bring them together, and just the process of it was very, very uplifting. We sat around like the way we were now. We gossiped, we laughed, we cried. Sometimes it was just very, very quiet because we were really trying to concentrate and make sure we're doing the right thing, and it was just a wonderful time. And when it ended, they were very still, hiding for more, especially when they came and found that their blanket had been, was here as a amongst other beautiful blankets, and they were curious about the skills and how to do that, you know. So we had a conversation yesterday, and I got to meet Jayna. It was wonderful to meet you, and she talked about how it's there are tentacles throughout the states of women just like us who come together just for the love of the art, and also just to connect and do something for other people. And we're thinking that we're going to do this again. We have a lot of new immigrants that are coming through, and we have already earmarked who we are going to pass the blankets to. So it's all wonderful. So it's really nice that the women also got to know other people within our community, like my friend Elaine. There you are.
Yes, I forgot to introduce Elaine. So thank you.
I used to work at Champlain College, so it was really exciting to see that, you know, Elaine was going to be out in our midst and helping in this, and she's wonderful. She has such a bank of skills that she can just pick up just like that, and she makes beautiful things, and so it was fun to.
But it was mutual. They taught me how to knit left-handed.
Yes. Anyway, we just had a wonderful time. So thank you so much for having me here. I won't take too much of your time. I'm sorry if I'm rambling here, but
Please
it's
keep going.
This has been fun. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you have for us. So thank you, and welcome.
This is amazing. It's so special to be here in Vermont. Thank you so much, Miriam, for bringing me out here, Vermont Humanities. Carabo, it was so special to be at ALV yesterday and connect with the group. It's so special to be here with you. I do a lot of stuff from home, so just to have, you know, this kind of energy for this kind of work is really exciting. So earlier today we were talking about stories, and Miriam was asking me some questions, and I brought up some other stories. So I'm including a bunch of pictures I haven't looked at for a while in here. You'll probably be the first to see this. And so it's really exciting to talk about this kind of work and think about where we've been and where we're going. So it all ties together, became the title of this at about 4:20 today. All right, so I'm gonna start with college. Like, this was I did not officially learn how to knit until I was in my mid-20s. But when I was in college, I started working with yarn and was really interested in sort of the length of how a line becomes something that becomes a surface, becomes something else. Afterwards, after college, I had gotten this job as a consultant, and as a kind of present from my dad of, thank goodness you're getting a job that will pay you money, I'm gonna send you to France for an installation class. And it didn't go how he planned, because I ended up post-management consulting going to architecture school. And this was sort of my first time that I thought, oh my God, I wanna work in space, and I wanna work in space with yarn and lines. And this was called Ascension. It was in France, and it kind of, it kind of changed the course of how I started thinking about what I could do and how I could interact in space. And I was climbing up this ladder and hanging things, and it was great. It was really great. And this is another picture I've never shown people before. This is my wedding, and above us, I had designed, of course, because I was working in architecture, I designed my own huppah that could be like dismantled very quickly. And then above it's all zip ties. And that's when I really was like, okay, I'm really crafting. And there was too much going on, and I had to basically bring friends together and ply them with wine to keep working on this project with me so that it would be done for my wedding. And I really noticed how important a group of people coming together is. And like, this was so special because it represents your first house, and it was like this first house of all these people who I love helping me make it. So it added all this meaning. So I'm getting a little verklempt. And it had this beautiful glow, and it stayed in my backyard for a very long time. And then I had, during the recession of 2008, I had kind of had a lot of shifts of the kind of work that I was able to do. And I was working in all sorts of different jobs. I was working as an architect a little bit, and I was working on artwork, and this is the first show that I curated that was with a friend that was called 13.3% is an exasperated reply to those who say there are no women making architecture. And it's based on a Lucy Lippard show about there are no women making conceptual art. And what we did is we came up with 13.3 questions to ask the people who would submit. It was an open call, and as long as you could answer those and fit your submission into the envelope, you were part of the show. So this kind of sparked this idea of like, oh my God, you see the handwriting. This was, it was amazing to see how long people stayed and read and wanted to know about these people and to see what they were coming up with. So this has always kind of stayed with me of like the power of each person adding kind of like their grain to the story, and how when we look at them all together, it creates this amplification of the meaning of it. Consultants call it synergy, but that feels like the wrong word to use. Okay, so I had gotten married. Everything was going great, and in 2013, I had a head and neck injury. And so a rod that was 14 feet tall fell on the back of my head while shopping for fabric, and it fully changed the course of my life. So instead of kind of working at all these different jobs and making things happen and kind of running around and being a whirlwind, I fully had to rebuild myself. So the first project actually that I ever came back to was 2016-17 was Pussy Hat. So it was a way of figuring out how could I make architecture, how could I make these group projects, how could I make it so that if I couldn't march, like how could I make it so all those other people couldn't be there, who couldn't be there could be there also. So part of my healing process was finding a modality, sort of not in the same kind of type of trauma, but figuring out how can I remember things, how can I learn something new. So I roped in a friend, Krista Sa, who's the co-founder of Pussy Hat Project, with a Groupon to go to the, right, it all starts with these like funny little things, to go to the Little Knittery. And I found this group of women, again, who were mostly women, some men also, but who really kind of nourished each other. And you could come and drop in, and regulars would come, and there was this table, and I'd learn things. I wouldn't have to talk very much, and I could just kind of absorb things. And at that point, I couldn't deal with sound. So this was like the one quiet place in the city of Los Angeles where I could be the worst person in the room, and it was like cozy. It was fantastic. So when the election happened, the march was announced basically the next day, and Krista, being just kind of able to do all the things and doing all the things, was like, I got my ticket, I'm going to DC, I'm marching, we gotta do something. And I knew I couldn't go and march. And I had that feeling of like, I wanna be there, but I really, really can't. And just felt really lonely and alone and frustrated, really frustrated. So I was thinking about what could I do that could kind of make it so people could be there, because I realized my story was, I wasn't the only one. Like, so there are lots of reasons you can't march. You know, you have to work, you know, like you have to be somewhere. You have to take care of someone. Women, you know, often are the ones who have the second shift of taking care of people. You know, there could be medical reasons. And so I knew that there were other people who were like me who maybe would want to do that too. So we were talking about stuff. And so I always love the excuse to show naked butts. So winding back to kind of earlier, before grad school, I had spent a year in Chile, and Spencer Tunick, the photographer, had come down, and Spencer Tunick does a lot of work with people in the nude, just regular people in large groups. And what was so exciting was he came down, did these pictures. I had lots of friends in their early 20s who were like, we're going, we're doing this. And I knew it wasn't about me, so I'm not in that picture. But it was wonderful because the headlines kept saying, are we really post-Pinochet? Like, and this piece of artwork was like a headline for like weeks. And it was really exciting to see that a photographer could come down and do this thing that, like, you know, kind of makes us giggle a little bit. But it also starts bringing up like, what's the next generation? And it created that sense of dialogue, and that stayed with me just forever. And I'm showing you a couple of art pieces that I just really have impacted me. This is Christo and Jean-Claude, the gates in Central Park. And it's really cold there, which, I mean, it's kind of exciting to be in cold right now, but it's really cold there. And just that sense, being a New England girl, like that sense of kind of the dark and the brown in the winter. And then all of a sudden you see this bright orange, and just the joy on people's faces as you walk through it was just a phenomenal experience. So I kind of was thinking about color, and then this is the piece of work that fully, I think, was the first time I knew artwork could actually not just kind of hold, it could really be something, and people could really take part. So this is the AIDS quilt, and all of a sudden I think I might be blanking on the name. I think it's Clive Jones, and if anyone knows if it's different, please correct me. And these are some details, and I was a child at the time during the AIDS crisis, and this was a time where when I saw on the news, apparently the news is a very big, is a very big part, and we all had the same news back then, but when I saw people talking about the people who had died, when I saw the people kind of crafting this and talking about the people they had lost, it changed this kind of big issue of people being scared of a disease to these are people who are being impacted by this disease. And it totally changed kind of how I thought you could kind of represent things. I've always been really shy, which might not seem like it right now, but I was voted most likely to need a microphone in grade school. So I was always making art and always thinking big things, but I just didn't know how to do it. So when I saw this, I saw that like all these people could be part of this big thing. So we're coming back to Pussy Pat Project. So those were the things that I was thinking about. In the top left is the March on Washington. And that was, the march also of like the march. And thinking about, it's 2016, what could we do that could give back to this march of women's rights? And how could we create a way that it has like a visual to it so that it can be remembered as being that specific march? Because there have been a lot of different marches on Washington, and how do you know how to discern them? So we were in a knit store, and Krista's originally from LA and isn't used to East Coast winters. And so we were talking about, the possibility of, she was like, maybe I could be naked, which works really well with Spencer tunic, right? But it's cold, and we're in a knit store, and she's like, maybe I could make a hat. And it's like, that seems like a really good opportunity. And we partnered with our knitting instructor, Kat Coyle. I don't know if anyone knows Kat Coyle. The world is very small, but she's a wonderful, wonderful teacher. And she created the design of the pussy hat. That was really easy to make. I'll get into that. So March on Washington and thinking of the sea of pink pixels. And not even kind of beyond that, thinking about like, not all the same pink, but what if you could see each individual person within it, and then we would be very distinct, like Christo's and Jean-Claude's gates, right? Like this bright color, but also make it different from other things that were, happening. And also we chose pink because it's usually associated with women. Like, does it make sense? Not really, but it is. So this was the front of our manifesto. I don't know if anyone ever had a physical copy of it. And I love this. Aurora Lady made it, and she presented, like she showed it to us in her kitchen, and she'd been working on it, and she was like taking out her frustration. And I love that out of that frustration, this joy happened. So the diagram, rectangle, fold it on its side, stitch it from the crease, put it on your head, cat ears. Everyone's like, yeah, we do this. We do this in the round. I love this picture because it shows just the permutations of just like, yeah, okay, you do that, but they all look different. And this is one woman's contribution, or like probably a third of it, but she took this picture.
1 second, so
Yeah.
as a yarn store owner,
Yeah.
we sold out of pink yarn.
Oh,
Totally,
yes, right.
Every weight,
Right.
every permutation of pink.
You couldn't get pink anywhere.
Here in a small town.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I heard people started dyeing yarn pink just to
We sold a lot of regular yarn that
You were
people
good.
change the color.
I mean, and just that sense of camaraderie from like people to people and people working on the same thing and being able to like extend the march not just to a specific day, but to the lead up of it and all the conversations you have to have around it. Which leads me into this is perfect. This is the Little Knittery. The store has moved to a different location, but this is like that warm, cozy place. And, I didn't necessarily know it at the time, but I understood that this was a great place for political organization because they're really smart people sitting around listening to each other, not just talking. You know, there's a really good kind of pace to it. And what I learned kind of post is that during the revolutionary times, during spinning bees, this was a form of organization during the revolution because nobody thought women were really doing anything in these, you know, little places. And clearly they were. So this felt like kind of at that time of, what's that? I'm sorry. It's always the women, right? Exactly. It's always the women. Like no one suspects the woman's doing anything. So it was really, really special. And we had people coming in to drop them off, people coming to pick them up. We had a father with 2 daughters on the last day just sitting and watching us knit. Like just like, he's like, I need this for my daughters. They need to know. Like they started learning how to make it. It was just this fantastic sense of community. So I was talking with Miriam before. She's like, how did they get there? So you could either, you know, take them to the march with you. We always asked for one of them to go to DC because we were a little worried with all the marches that were like, what if it's just kind of like a little pink? So the first one to DC. And then if you were going, take it. If your friend was going, give it to your friend. If you don't, you know someone directly who's going, go to a local partner yarn store who, honestly, the yarn stores are these hubs of community that made this project work. So I think we had 180 or 200 where you could have discounts and people could pick them up. And I'm just looking at you and just thank you. But it's just amazing because like I discovered community in my yarn store. But it was really exciting to know that there's just this network of people who love to craft and want to support each other. And if we harness that, like, what can't we do? So local yarn stores. And then the 4th place is if you just wanted to send it in the mail somewhere, because sometimes you just want to do that. The McKnight family in Reston, Virginia, were our official Pussy Hat hub. And we found them through Miss Molly at the Little Knittery. Her goddaughter is named Molly, and she was home from college. And so apparently she needed something to do, and they expected like 50 or 100, and they got thousands of them. So it was just great. And then this is what happened. This is what we did. And I wasn't there. So every time I see it, I'm like, I see all the people who weren't there. It's like double the people or triple the people. And it really reminds me of sort of every time there's a march or you see people on the front lines, they're always the people who are behind them and kind of that depth of support that we all need. So we ended up on the cover. Yeah.
I know, it's so good.
We also did some for the ASL interpreters in black, but with pink ears, so when they weren't interpreting, they could turn them around and have their bit of pink.
And that was your group?
I'm sure we didn't supply all of them, but I knew someone who was leading the ASL folks, and so I sent her to Chicago, probably a dozen, and then she got them from other people as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. This is great.
So there are all these stories. So like for me, this project has been so wonderful because we just met and I know that piece, right? And so it's sort of how we connect. And the picture of that pussy hat came from a woman named Lupita in Mexico to someone who's a photographer at the Times. And that's just kind of how it happened. Like it's just amazing. I'm forgetting the name of the illustrator for the New Yorker, but she submitted that as a drawing cold and they took it. She's an illustrator, like she's very good. But that's how that worked. It's just all these people coming together around something, which is women's rights are human rights, right? But there's this ability to have this form and this silhouette and this symbolism that only became a symbol because people used it and it meant something to them. So it's amazing. We ended up on Missoni's runway. I know. It's just mind-boggling. They're gorgeous. And then these are some women in Japan from International Women's Day, and they made them out of old kimonos. Swiss Parliament on the left for International Women's Day, which is just really cool. And this is the Victoria Albert Museum. It's really, when you create artwork, you don't necessarily, we didn't create this to show up in museums, but it's just really exciting that it's there. And it's that one's actually mine. And so that's really kind of mind-boggling and crazy because I love the V&A. But it was, my best friend does not knit, and so she does not, she actually she went to the march, but she knew someone going to DC, so she was like the connector and the glue. So I love in that story that you weren't even a marcher or necessarily a knitter, but like you could connect people in a way. So there's a place for everyone. So, a little side story. Okay, so we'll transition over to Welcome Blanket. And it came very much on the heels of Pussy Hat Project. So this is the story from today, which I haven't shown for a really long time. It came on the heels of Pussy Hat Project, and when I was talking with Miriam, she's like, no, but where did it come from? My now husband became a skydiver after we started dating. I know, you didn't expect that one. He became a skydiver, and it terrified me. And he's like, oh yeah, we jump from like a mile up when you hop and pop. And I'm like, this sounds terrible. I don't understand. So it's a mile of caution. So I took a mile of caution tape to understand how far that was, because it was like this abstract form. Like, what does this mean? So this is what it looks like. I mean, I just kind of had to make it, and it's in a field, and it's been put in different places, but it really helped me kind of think about these abstract lines, kind of like my college piece of like these lines, and how do you create these surfaces, and kind of what can we do. So we're going to go forward a little bit. Donald Trump's candidacy speech about building a wall totally kind of confounded me, because with a background of architecture, thinking of a 2,000-mile long wall, I just literally couldn't understand how that works, or like how long that distance is. I was thinking of this mile of caution, doing that 2,000 times, and how long that would take, and it just felt really, really, really confusing. And all my grandparents came from different countries. Some of them as refugees, some of them as refugees without the title of refugees, and they came through the Statue of Liberty. So part of my growing up was hearing these stories of even the motion of like, and then I saw her, this idea of you've arrived. And it's this piece of artwork, that you've arrived and you've come somewhere new. And so I had just kind of been thinking about this for a while, of this 2,000 miles, and like, also being an architect, you think about the embodied energy and what you do with things afterwards. And I was like, well, if you knit 2,000 miles, what do you do with it? Like, I don't understand. So there needs to be another purpose. So as we came at the heels of the Women's March, and then there were the demonstrations in the airports where there was a Muslim ban, I was looking at the demonstrations at LAX. I still could not go to those. And I thought, oh my gosh, how non-ceremonial is it to start a whole new life in a place and not have someone just be like, welcome. Like, you just get a stamp and you go, and what happens, I don't know. And it came together of like, we have these 2,000 miles. People need things to be welcomed to them. Like, there are these notes from Pussy Hat Project, from makers to marchers. What if we created a new project that wasn't meant for a moment? That worked out really, really well. But made something that became something more durational, that could kind of build over time and could be something incredibly personal as well. So welcome to Welcome Blanket. So Welcome Blanket started as a reimagination of the 2,000 miles. And instead of thinking about it as a distance to push people out, is a distance to welcome people in. So the idea is that people make, it doesn't always end up this way, but 40 inches by 40 inches, easy to care for and hard to give away, symbolic and practical gifts of welcome. So these are really gifts that you give from a neighbor, to just kind of start off with something where you can say, welcome, here you are. You got your passport stamped, but really, like, here's one more thing that I sat down and made this for you. And I might never meet you, but I'm really happy you're here. And I asked that people include stories important to their families about immigration, migration, or relocation, and interpret it, as they see fit, and also with some words of welcome. So here's some variations. I mean, we're right here. You see a lot of variations, but I love seeing them all together. This is one that's currently up in Los Angeles, and it's from a 7th grade class where they took different flowers and the meanings of those flowers and wishes for those, and then the teacher had put them all together. And it's just really beautiful to see classes come together and talk about immigration, talk about art, talk about quilting, learn skills. We just met someone today who taught 5th graders how to iron for the first time and thread a needle for the first time, but also learn their family stories because they didn't necessarily know them. So this is a really great opportunity to kind of dig deep into ourselves, learn about ourselves, so that then when we hear the news and we see the news, one of these 7th graders who made these will be like, you know what? I went home and I learned my story, and here's my story. And then when someone else comes in, they're like, oh my gosh, we have this in common. It's just a couple different generations. That's it. It's all about people. And I think if we can do that and we can sow those seeds now, 50 years from now, when the next wave of xenophobia, hopefully this is going to stop, but the next wave comes back up again, we can have all these people who are like, I've worked on welcome blankets. I know my story. I've welcomed people. This is a lot of BS. We can talk about the policies, but this is crazy. I love this one because we've had people ages 4 to 104 working on these. All levels are welcome, all mediums are welcome. And the little girl was learning to quilt for the first time. I'll read this one fully. From Valerie. She says, my ancestors came to these shores over 300 years ago. Many years from now, your descendants, too, will tell the story of how you arrived and how you thrived. May you be warmed in many welcoming circles in your new home. So she said it better than I could. It was great. This one is very small, so I'll just tell you about it. This is one of the shows we have happening right now is in Los Angeles. So it's really exciting to be in the Mill Museum and learning about the history of the Mill Museum and of people in Vermont. There are some threads of these stories of where people come from. In LA, we've received a bunch from people who are Japanese whose families have been in internment camps. So we get this gorgeous, you can see the colors coming out. Open up this note with flowers, and she talks about how her grandparents met in a Japanese internment camp and how her grandfather never stopped loving this country. And you just feel it. And he named his son Jefferson after Thomas Jefferson, and just how she's a child of the 70s and 80s and wanted to make them something really bright and welcoming. And you take this history that's really, really rough, and you take it with, this sense of welcoming. It's part of our American story of who we are, and we all come from somewhere, and we all have different experiences when we're here. And this is an opportunity to honor each of those, and each person has their own space to be able to do that. So this is in Chicago. This was our first one on the heels of Pussy Hat when everyone was knitting out of frustration. So this is down in their storage area, and these are all blankets. It's amazing. These are volunteers cataloging them. So Miriam has been cataloging all the different blankets and taking pictures of them so we can keep track of them and create a national archive over time. I have big visions for that, but we can talk about that later. These are some notes of people who've come into different museums. Sometimes we have people write and share their stories. There's a story kiosk over there as well, so you can share your story. And the one on the left, her mom flew to the U.S. from Havana because of love. Also really fantastic, a great reason to be here. And then the one to the right of it, they were right next to each other. When I saw them, it was, my family has been here for centuries, brought here through displacement, a result of the triangular trade, a daughter of the diaspora. And you take both of those together, and it's our history, and it is what we should be talking about, and it is what we should be talking about in circles. So this was the Smart Museum. Towards the end, we started with an empty gallery and just filled it up. These are people looking at blankets, kind of like we are here. And then this is one example of how people have been using them in their homes. So some people have used them for blankets, but then they'll show up on the wall or on a table. And it's really nice because people are coming to these places often with very, very, very little. So it's really nice to have something that's made with care just for them. We have an online archive so that you can look for your blanket. And also when you receive one, you can look at this archive and know that yours is one of a kind and it's one of thousands. And you know there are thousands of people who care that you're here. This is at MODA. I'm just going to flip them through. This was our second time at MODA. They brought us back. This is Fuller Craft. It's one wall, but you can kind of see. It looks very spatially like you walk through. I like it, but it was one long wall. This is the Smart earlier on. This is Brookline, the town of Brookline, Massachusetts. They did a beautiful, beautiful one, and they're actually putting something together soon. This is Skirball. This is what's happening right now, and I've been there like refreshing the blankets so that we can try to get everyone's on view. This is at the Walt Disney Hall at the LA Phil. We had a pop-up from, if you sent a quilt to Helms over the summer, some of those ended up in this pop-up, and it was for, so you can kind of see them in the back, and kids are learning how to craft. It's like a morning piece, and it was really great to see it in that space. It was really beautiful. We were at SFO, San Francisco Airport. So, cool. So that was this fall also. It's been a really busy 2022, or it was a busy 2022. Not yet. Not yet. It's going to be at LAX this spring. So if anyone has Chicago contacts, let me know. SFO. This is Helms in Los Angeles, and it was just in the New York Times for one of the hidden gems of small museums in Los Angeles. It just came today, and it was a really great space and wonderful to work with people there. We were part of a pop-up of an immigration festival, so like we can take these to the streets sometimes and more people can see them. I love that we're both in museums and also like in airports or outside, because this is really about reaching as many people as possible. This is us packing them up, so you got to learn a little bit about where they go afterwards. So a lot of volunteers pack them up. There are different ways of doing it. This is one way. And then these are some of the refugee organization partners. So often with different places, like the Mill Museum, they'll partner with an organization, and these are some of the ones that we've partnered with. And these are some of the people receiving them. I'm just realizing that you've seen the picture on the left, but I swear it's more than just these 3 pictures. And the one on the right is from MODA in Atlanta. They've been doing giveaway days where you pick the one that resonates to you. So it's a different way of gifting. So different organizations do it in different ways, and the people they work with were like, let's bring them all out and bring a lot of people. We'll see what happens. So they're still giving them away. So it's going a little slowly, but they're having a great time connecting with people. So it's really cool. This is one of the women who found one that spoke to her. And she seems really happy about it, which is really great. And our partner was doing our partner Miri's list ended up on CNN, and we watched someone open up a box, and she said, someone made this for me, and they don't even know me. And she hugged it. And it was just, it's the best. It's the best. And these are just some of the blankets, just kind of all together. There we are. Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much. Are there any questions I can answer about any kind of project, any kind of stuff? Yeah.
If you want to make a blanket after all the organization is done, what do you do or where do you send it?
That is a fantastic question.
Thank you. Maybe, yes. So the idea is I want this to become an American tradition. So we've been continuously having a place since 2017 to send them. So even if we don't have a show going on, we have sort of a side side program called Welcome Blanket on Call, where you would send them to one of our refugee organization partners who's like ready to receive the work, you know, in piecemeal versus like, here, have 10 blankets, here, have 50 blankets. So the way to always know what to do whenever you're done with your blanket, just keep making them. Keep going. Whenever you're done, check on our website. On the homepage, they'll always have, like, here's the place to send it. And then, not to put Miriam on the spot, but if, like, you know, if you finish a blanket and you accidentally send it to the wrong place, like, don't bring it to Miriam after the close of the show. But if something, you know, if by accident you sent it in the mail and it takes, like, 2 months to get, like, down the road or something, like, every single person we've worked with has made sure that they go to where it's supposed to go. But definitely check the website. Don't send it to Miriam. Sorry. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the tag and the whole idea, like, you know, how much people put on when you shared some there? Obviously, there's some here, you know, any tips on that or
Tips on tags?
tips on tags, like how rich it should be, how long, you know.
I'd say whatever really whatever speaks to you. Some people, I mean, I kind of love the tags that say, I don't actually know where, like, my family's from, you know, because that's also part of our history. So whatever it is that, you know, moves you. One that really is really sat with me, and it was from the first time we did it, is I was with kids at the lab school at University of Chicago, which is right next to the museum where the SMART is, and they were doing their own welcome blanket version. Like, this is really great. And so we brought a bunch of notes over for them to kind of look through and see, and one of them, this 11-year-old was reading, and it was from a girl who was also like 11, I think, like around the same age, and she said, you know, these are the names of my siblings. And then she said, these are also the names of my siblings. And one set sounded very much like a set of siblings, and another set sounded very different. And she said that her mom couldn't take care of her, but she now has another family that's also taking care of her, and that everyone can start over. And that's not what you expect in a tag, right? Like, you just don't expect it. And, you know, and here are these kids in middle school who are like,
What? And she made a blanket too? Like who is this person? And it's just, you know,
that's just part of it, you know, and why we came here can be so many different reasons. And like, my family history has a lot of different stories. Just pick one, you know, and then save another one for another blanket.
Yeah. What's your next project gonna be?
Well, right now I'm pretty focused on trying to figure out how to make Welcome Blanket like a nonprofit that can like have a sustainable foundation, and figuring out, I love this project. Like, this to me is like the heart of who we can be, and so I'm kind of working on like those pieces of trying to figure it out, looking for places that might want to host. So if anybody knows like any kind of cultural institutions of any size that might want to host, all ears. And so that part's very much where I'm focused on right now. There are always tinkerings in the back, but this is, I think, dealing with xenophobia and talking about our different kinds of histories, and whether it's, you know, whatever reason we may have come here, really talking about that together, I think is one of the most important things we can be doing right now. And it's opened my world that was so closed, and like I still can't march. Like, you know, like there's a thing, it's amazing. Like, my world expanded so much because of this project and because of everyone here. And I love that. I really love that. But there are so many issues. Like, there are a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues in this world. So I think figuring out how to make sure everyone has a voice within, I really love that everyone has a voice within these projects, and that there's a freedom to it. I really love that. I really love that part, to being really sensitive to why someone would want to be part of something like this, and thinking about, you know, what do each of us kind of like feel and gain from it. And I'd love for this to be a project that people kind of keep doing. There's one woman who's made 43 blankets, and they're all different. Like, each one is all different. And she wrote me, and she's like, this has just become part of my life. Like, this is just what I do. And I know. And it's just, I love these projects too because I meet the best people, because I meet people who want to be doing something positive and creative and kind and thoughtful. So like my world's really great. Like it's pretty wonderful. And I think kind of figuring out how to always harness that is really important. That was a really long answer to your question.
No.
Yeah.
It's inspiring.
Yeah, so I'm curious about how you spread the word. I mean, the Pussycat Project spread like wildfire.
Yeah.
And I think the Welcome Blanket Project is not quite as quickly, because that was, as you said, a moment in time with an event. So how?
I think,
Well, I think these projects come from a really, I mean, they come from a real place. Like I don't think of myself as a public speaker, but I just talk. So I think that probably got transmitted, and I think because it's gotten transmitted in the projects themselves, you might not necessarily know like who I was. Like you're not like, oh, Jayna's doing the Pissy Hat project, you know. But the project meant something to you, and so you did it, and it's your project. And I think when it becomes something where someone has ownership over it, they want to share it with someone else because they care. And I think that's really why, like, Welcome Blanket it moves slower, but I think people really, it resonated with them. And then with the Women's March, do you remember how quiet it was during the Obama years? Like, do you remember, like, it was so quiet. And so, you know, Trump had been elected, but like not much was going on. And so we knew this Women's March was happening, and it was the visual. Like, I mean, how do you represent this thing is coming? You're like, what are these pink, like, there's a pink hat here, there's a pink hat there. And then certain journalists loved the project. Like, there were knitters who were like, I think this is great. Like, let's talk about it on the radio. And the answer is always yes. Like, of course. Like, let's talk about it. And I think because it resonated, it took off. And I think because it was, you know, a clear visual silhouette, and it's really amazing to see hot pink, like, in a newspaper. You know, like, it really catches your eye. And so I think that really helps a lot.
Knitters out there in the world.
there are a lot of knitters. There are so many knitters, and there's so many people who want to become knitters. And these are like
The knitters around the world are happy to knit for other people.
Yes, it's so true. And the pattern itself, Kat designed so that I could do it. So, like, it's for beginners. Like, it's really, like, the best. It's easier than a scarf. Like, it's a really great, that was a really great first project.
If you want to.
What's that?
I knit it in the round. You can make it.
Yeah, you can knit it. Yeah, you can totally knit it in the round. I kind of knit them in the round, but at the same time, it's like if you were afraid of circular needles, right? I don't know if anyone here ever remembers being afraid of circular needles. I was a little afraid before Pussy Hat started, and I kind of figured it out. So it's I love these projects too because it's for like the craft curious also, and that kind of bravery of starting something new and learning something new, and like, you know, when you care about something, you can like talk about it, you can write about it, but like to actually also like manifest like an object like because of something, like that's really powerful. Like knitters are very powerful, and knitting is an incredibly, you know, knitting, quilting, crocheting, weaving, like this process of making is incredibly powerful because you're manifesting something that has never been there before in the history of the planet. Like that yarn did not exist in that form before. And I think we should be celebrating that. I think it's amazing.
I think the hats are quick also. The welcome blanket takes a little bit longer, no matter how you craft it. So I think that's another piece of it. Like,
Yeah.
a knitter can knit that hat in, you know, an afternoon probably, or
Yeah.
maybe a day, and the welcome blanket takes a lot longer. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
a forever commitment, but it's, you know, a bigger commitment.
It's a much bigger commitment. And with Pussy Hat also, when the yarn ran out, people were making them with like fleece and like folding them in half and like gluing them together. So it's a little different than like you wouldn't glue together a welcome blanket. That doesn't kind of make, it's not the same thing. Yeah.
Yes. I was
so impressed by your 2,000 miles of blankets imagery. And I'm curious if you have any rough calculation of how many blankets in miles have been.
Okay, so when I first started it, I was thinking about it as like a line of yarn that would all be needed to welcome blankets. And we hit that, I think, at like 2,700-ish. I think like an estimate, right? Because there's quilts and there are all these pieces. So it's an excellent question, and I feel like it's later in the evening. I'm like, oh my gosh, multiplication's hard right now. But we hit that first goal in the first year. So
You could measure it in yardage used, or you could measure it in like 40 inches.
How many blankets?
Yeah.
How many blankets have you donated?
We've made, that's an excellent question. This one I know. Over 6,500 have been made and gifted.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have 70 here.
Wow. There's 70
Yeah.
here. 70. And that's like more than 70 stories.
Are there patterns on Ravelry to make the
Yes.
a 40 by 40 blanket?
Well, we even have a free pattern on our website that I think is on Cat Coil's Ravelry, but if you
Yeah.
check out our website, it is on
There's
there.
a suggestion of how to start,
Yeah.
but a lot of people that do the store just make their own
Yeah.
thing up, where some people knit like a true 40 by 40 square. I think that's a lot to carry around. I'm knitting mine in squares, smaller squares, but, but there is sort of a formula, and on Ravelry there is, if you look at that.
Yeah. I love how most of them, I'm like, nope, that's not it. But the one in the foreground. Oh, okay. But the come together blanket is 4 squares that are like on the bias. You can kind of see the blue one, and then you put them together into different shapes. So from the get go, it was like, we'll give you a pattern, but there are like 1,000 different ways of putting this together anyway. So yeah, a lot of people, as you look around, you might see a people like that, but a lot of times people just do what comes from them.
This may be on the website, I haven't seen it, but I thought that the quilts were always, had to be fabric, so to learn that they could be knitted, that's really great.
Or felted, or anything,
Yeah.
there's just.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, are they recommending acrylic yarns or wool or
Easy
something?
to care for.
So why-
So just imagine, someone's in a place that's new, they might bring it to a laundromat, they might hand wash it,
Right.
but you never want to send someone to like a dry cleaner.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of these are knitted and.
For sure, mine is.
And many different hats,
It's easy, you make 16 squares and you hook them together.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah, and I recommend the 16 square one if you're doing it in a group. Like if you're like, I don't know if I can take this on right now.
Right.
Find a couple of people, and you'll see some great ones, like the ones that get put together that are a little bit more like hodgepodge
This
are
is the
amazing.
Champlain College
Oh,
students.
yeah.
And then this is the one that the crochet one that the group from ALB.
And can you imagine it being more gorgeous? Like it's just,
They're all beautiful.
they're all beautiful. They're all beautiful.